My dad and I have built a deck on every single home that we've ever lived in. Between the two of us, that makes 5 different decks. Most people, I think, walk into a new home and they think, oh, the flooring needs changed, or maybe we need some new paint on the walls. Not my dad and I. We walk into a home and say, well, this deck's not going to cut it. We need to do something more here. And so we've built decks and we've extended decks, 5 between the two of us. 2 of those decks, though, were much harder to complete than the other 3, and here's why. When I started having children of my own, and that schedule between sports and just stuff they have going on started getting more hectic, and then even the ministry here, the schedule demands started getting greater. It got to the point where our schedules just weren't matching up. And so he was building a deck on the back of a new house that he had moved into, and we had moved in to a house in Roaring Spring around similar times, and we just weren't able to kind of sync up and work together as a team on those projects, and we wound up doing a lot of it kind of on our own, or we would get other people to help us with certain things. And it was just a lot harder to do, and it's not as fun. It's not as fun. It takes longer, it's harder to do, and it's just not as fun when you don't work together with a teammate. When it comes to families, when it comes to church ministry, when it comes to your marriage, I think most of us, we want to build something that matters. And we want whatever it is that we build that matters. We want it to last. We wanted to build it in such a way that it lasts. You know, when we were building those decks, we always had a good plan. We had good building materials, and it took a lot of hard work. And the same thing is true in the things that you and I are building in our lives. We want those things to not only, we know that they matter, but we want them to be built with a good plan, with strong materials, and a lot of hard work and investment into those things so that they last, so that they're built to last. Something, though, that I've learned through experience is that when you are building things that matter and you're trying to build them in such a way that they last, it's just a lot more fun. And you get a lot more done when you work together with a team. And that's what we're going to be learning together today from the book of Nehemiah. I'm going to encourage you to open your Bibles and join me in the book of Nehemiah this morning. We're going to continue our study of his life story. This is his memoir. This is his life story as it fits into the bigger story of God's plan of redemption in your life and in mine. We found out last week that Nehemiah had a vision. He was given a mission by God to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and the gates that had been torn down by Babylon, and the city had been wiped out. And God had given him this vision, this mission to go and rebuild the city walls. But not just the gates and the walls themselves. Everything needed to be rebuilt. The economy needed to be rebuilt. The spiritual and emotional capital of these people was decimated. They were struggling to survive. And so all of that needed to be rebuilt and restored. And for that vision, for that mission to be accomplished, he needed God's help. We talked about that last week. He needed God's help, and he's going to need a team. I mean, think about what it would be like to try to rebuild an entire city wall by yourself, right? It's not going to happen. It's going to be an impossible task. He needs God's help, and he needs a team. So if you would open your Bibles to Nehemiah chapter 2, we're going to look at some things there. If you have the notes page that you got when you came in, you can use that to fill in some blanks this morning, take a few notes. I would encourage you, if you don't use the notes page on the website in a Sunday morning, that's fine. But there's some really cool things on there that when you go home today, you can check out. Last week's sermon is on there, the video from that if you missed last week. Also, there's a video on there from the Bible Project. It's like a historical background video, really well done. Describes the background, the historical background of Ezra's life and Nehemiah's life. And I think it's a helpful thing for everyone to watch, because I'm not going to be able to go through verse by verse every single thing within every single chapter. We don't have time to do that. But if you have a better understanding of what's happening historically in the background, I think what we're going to talk about and hit some of these highlights is going to make a lot more sense. It's going to help that story come to life for you. So I would encourage you to check that out. We're going to spend most of our time this morning in chapter 4. But I want to give you a little bit of insight into what was happening in chapter 2 and 3 so that chapter 4 makes sense. In chapter 2, Nehemiah goes to King Artaxerxes and he makes a big ask. He tells them about the state of the walls and the people in Jerusalem, and he asks if he can have a leave of absence from work. If he can have an extended, not like a week vacation, but an extended sabbatical from work so that he can go back and lead the rebuilding of the walls. And would you also consider funding this project? That's a really big ask. And last week we saw that Nehemiah prayed about that. He asked God's help and favor. And when Nehemiah does make this request, can I have extended time off? Will you fund this project? God moved in the heart of King Artaxerxes, and he granted that request. It's pretty incredible. When you have time, read through chapter 2. Then we get to chapter 3, and here's what's happening. All the way through chapter 2, and then even into chapter 4, we think that things are going to be smooth sailing, but what we find is that they're not. I mean, he's got the king's backing. He has permits. He has official papers from the king. He's got funding papers from the king. He's got all this stuff. And you think, well, this is really going to be smooth sailing. And what we find is in chapter 2, verse 10, look at this. We meet this guy named Sanballat. Sanballat the Hornite, he was the governor of that region at the time. And Tobiah, he's an Ammonite official, another foreign people group. He heard of the arrival, and they were very displeased that someone had come to help the people of Israel. Skip down to verse 19. Sanballat, Tobiah, and now this Geshem the Arab, they heard about the plan, and they scoffed contemptuously. What are you doing? You rebelling against the king? You go to chapter 4, verses 1, 2, and 3. We see Sanballat. He's really ticked off. He's very angry about this rebuilding. He flies into a rage. He mocks the Jews. And it says in verse 2, he says all of this in front of his friends and the Samaritan army officers. So the group of people seems to be growing here. And then we get down to verse 7, we got Sanballat, Tobiah, we got the Arabs, we got the Ammonites, the Ashdodites. They all hear about this work that's going on. And what I'm saying is, as I walk through the story, the problem people, the number of them just keeps growing and growing and growing. And so it's not smooth sailing. It's not going to be an easy mission. For this mission to be accomplished, he's going to need God's help, and he's going to need a team. And that's what chapter 3 is all about. We're not going to read through all of that. I would ask you to kind of scan over it visually. What you'll see is this. It's describing this group of people worked on this gate. And then right beside them, there was this group of people, this group of families. They worked on this section of the wall. And beside them, there's this group of people working on this tower. So it goes down through and describes all of these different families and groups of people working on different sections as they work together as a team. Right? A lot of people chipping in to do a little, they were able to accomplish a lot. And that's what teamwork looks like. Here's why it matters to us today. Here's why it matters to you and to me and my family in this church ministry. Here at Grace Fellowship, we want to build a ministry, obviously, that lasts, that endures beyond our generation. Right? That's what we want to see. Our vision here at Grace Fellowship is we want to help people meet Jesus, teach them how to follow Jesus and how to share Jesus so that we've got a group of people that gather together who are living Jesus-centered lives. That's what we want to see happen in every one of your lives. That's our vision as a ministry. And we can have a really good plan for that. We can have some really good building materials for that. But if we don't have ministry teams actually making that happen, working hard to make that happen, we're never going to reach that vision. We're never going to accomplish that mission. The same thing's true with your family. Same thing's true with your marriage. Those things in your life are supposed to be teams, right? You and your spouse are supposed to be a team. You're supposed to be, as a family unit, a team. And if you're not working together to build something that lasts, then you won't. You'll never really build something as a married couple or as a family that has eternal value to it if you're not working together to see that take place. When we are building things that matter and we're building them to last, we're always going to build something stronger as a team. So we're going to slow down here in chapter 4. We're going to look a little bit closer at chapter 4 because there are some really very simple and I think very valuable principles that we can pull out of chapter 4 that will help us build stronger teams as a ministry, as a married couple, even as a family. I think there's some really good things in here that we can apply in our lives that will help us be a stronger team. So here's the first one. Write this down in your notes if you're filling in the blanks. A strong team trusts in the Lord. A strong team trusts in the Lord. After verses 1, 2, and 3 describe the problem in chapter 4, we get to verse 4 and it says how Nehemiah approaches the problem. It says that he prayed. That's the first thing we notice. We talked about this last week. Nehemiah was a man of prayer and he prayed about this problem. Here's what he says. Hear us, our God, for we are being mocked. May their scoffing fall back on their own heads, and may they themselves become captives in a foreign land. If you skip down to verse 9, he says, we prayed to our God and guarded the city day and night to protect ourselves. Go to verse 20. Verse 20 he says, when you hear the blast, this was their plan. If you hear the blast of the trumpet, that means there's a problem. We're being attacked, and everybody go to the sound of the trumpet, and we'll help fight. But they're also, it says in verse 20, depending on God. Then our God will fight for us. Our God will fight for us. They prayed, they trusted God to fight for them, to give them success in their mission. This is an absolute fundamental principle of building a strong team. We need the Lord's help. We need God to fight for us if we're going to build something that matters and we're going to build it to last. Psalm 127 verse 1 is, I think, a pretty famous verse. A lot of people have heard this. Unless the Lord builds the house, its builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchmen stand guard in vain. We will not be successful in ministry if the Lord is not fighting for us. We need the Lord's help. We need His power, His guidance, His wisdom, His strength. We need the Lord to fight for us if we are going to have a strong ministry here at Grace Fellowship. We absolutely need that. We can never forget that as we move towards working really hard and having a good plan and good building materials, we can never step away from our need, our dependence on God's power. You know, even if you're not yet a follower of Jesus Christ, and that's possible, it's possible there's someone here today that's just not spiritually where you're at yet. You've not taken that step of faith to trust Christ as your Savior. You're not yet following Him. But I would be willing to guess that even if that's where you're at spiritually, you still want a strong family. You still want a strong marriage. I bet if I were to give you the choice, would you want to have a strong, healthy marriage that's full of love and passion and hope? Would you want that, or one that's just kind of falling apart and it's a mess and you're really not sure if it's going to last? You'd probably pick the strong marriage. Same thing with your family. Would you, given the choice, would you want a family that is full of strength and purpose and love and joy, or one that's just kind of a mess with no real direction to it and it's kind of all over the place? You'd probably pick the strong family. In order for us to really have the kind of strong family or strong marriage that we would envision that looks like that, we need the Lord's help. The same principle is true. Here's why. In order to have that kind of strength in your family and in your marriage, you need God fighting for you. You need God fighting for you, not against you. And if we're just going through life doing our own thing, playing by our own set of rules, right? A lot of people kind of think that way. I got my own way of thinking. I got my own way of doing things. And it doesn't match up with what God is calling us to do in life, then you're fighting against Him rather than allowing God to fight for you, to fight for your marriage, to fight for your family. Our vision, when we're building things that matter, when we're building things that we want to see last, it's always going to be built stronger in a team. And strong teams trust in the Lord. Here's something else strong teams do. Write this down. Strong teams share the vision. Strong teams share the vision. We saw the vision in chapter 2, verse 17. The vision's very simple. Nehemiah said to them, "You know very well what trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruin. Its gates have been destroyed by fire. Let's rebuild. Let's rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. Let's end this disgrace." That's the mission. That's the vision. And he told them all about what had happened with King Artaxerxes and how God's hand was for them, that God was fighting for them. And they replied in verse 18, "Yes, let's rebuild the wall," and they began the good work. They shared the same vision, not only to rebuild the wall, but as we walk through the story, we're going to see they're going to rebuild their economy. They're going to rebuild their community. They're going to rebuild their families. There's a lot of things that need to take place in Jerusalem. Our vision as a church, as we've said, we want to see people meet Jesus, follow Jesus, and share Jesus. And a big part of learning how to share Jesus is found in participating in ministry teams. That's where a lot of that happens. And you need to understand that when you're changing a dirty diaper in the nursery, when you're helping to find a place for a car to park out in the parking lot, when you're shoveling snow off of our sidewalk, when you're greeting people at the door, when you're leading a song from the platform, whatever those ministries are, seen or unseen, when you're doing those things, you are helping people live Jesus-centered lives. Because you are helping be part of the team that's accomplishing that vision, that's moving to accomplish that mission. All those things matter when we work together as a team. We all do a little bit and we can accomplish a lot. If you want to be a healthy disciple of Jesus, you need to be part of a ministry team. That's what healthy disciples do. They serve. They help support the mission, the vision of the church. Imagine a sports team. I don't know what kind of sports you like. Maybe you don't even like sports, but just pick one in your mind and imagine a sports team that every player and all the coaches, they all have a different vision in mind. They all have a kind of their own mission in mind. What a mess, right? If one player says in his mind, well, I want to make sure that I'm scoring more points than this other teammate of mine, or I want to make sure that I make a play at this game that everybody's talking about, and this player over here, so I just want to make sure that I get the attention of the cheerleaders. I don't care about the fans, right? And you've got all of these different missions and visions on the same team. They're going to be all over the place, except in the win column. They're not going to be found in the win column, but they're going to be all over the place as a team. You need to have the same vision. Share that vision if you're going to accomplish wins together as a team. And I can give you some examples from our own church ministry, one where we're not doing such a great job and one where I think we're doing an amazing job. One of the places that I think we can do better in this is with our Grace Group ministry. In our Grace Group ministry, our vision is to see that become a multiplying force where we are helping people become healthy disciples of Jesus. But in order for it to become a multiplying force, you need to have growth, right? Where the groups are growing, more people are getting into groups, and you need multiplication. You need to be willing that those groups, as they grow, don't become 3, 4, 5 small little churches within the big church, but they multiply so that the groups continue to multiply into this group, and then that group gives birth to another group, and that gives birth to another group. A multiplying force, right? That's the vision of what we'd like to see happen with grace groups. But here's the problem. We all have this tendency in life. We all lean towards, I like things to stay the same. I like my group. I like the people in my group. They're my friends, and I don't want to see them go to another group, and I don't want to do. We have that tendency where we want it to not change, right? But if we're not willing to multiply, we'll never reach that vision of seeing our grace groups be a multiplying force of helping people become healthy disciples of Jesus. So we have some room there for improvement. Let me tell you where we're getting it really, where we're doing a really good job. About 6 months ago, I think it was about 6 months ago, we started evaluating our check-in system and how are we really doing. What we discovered was we were at about 25% of parents, grandparents using the check-in, check-out system, following the instructions. About 25% of people were doing that. And I think we would all agree 25% is probably not real great, right? I think we would say, well, there's definitely room for improvement there. And so we started talking, well, how do we improve that? Because we want to keep our kids safe, and we want to make sure that when new parents come, that they see that we take safety and security seriously. That's not just something we say, it's something we do. And so fast forward to today, currently, we are at 98% of people, parents, grandparents, that are using the check-in, check-out system as we've asked. And I don't want you to sit there thinking, well, we're going to find those 2% of people and we're going to... No, that's really amazing. 98% is really good. We'll get to 100. I think we will. But 98% is really, truly amazing. And we're very thankful for that. Now, how did it happen? How do we go from 25%, which is pretty terrible, to 98%, which is pretty great? How did that happen? It happened because all of our staff, our parents, our grandparents, our volunteers, they all shared a vision that we need to make sure that we're keeping our kids safe and that we're communicating to new families that are coming here that we take that seriously. And because of that, we were able to make some really cool changes and move in a healthy direction. So when we're building something that matters and we're building something to last, we're always going to build something stronger when we do it together as a team. And strong teams share a vision. Here's something else they share. Strong teams share the load. Write that down on your notes page. Strong teams share the load. If you go to chapter 4, verse 10, what you see there is the problem. They were getting tired. This is a lot of work to build a city wall. It's about 1.5 miles around the city. And it's a lot of work. They're working with stones that have been charred, broken down. There are piles of rubble. It's hard work. And they're getting tired. There's so much rubble to be removed. And then on top of that, not only is it hard work, they're getting harassed every day by these foreigners that are coming in and making fun of them, threatening that they're going to knock the wall over or beat them up or kill them. All of these challenges that they are facing. And they're getting discouraged. They're getting worn out. And verse 15 says this, when our enemies heard that we knew of their plans and that God had frustrated them, we all returned to our work on the wall. But verse 16 says, but from then on, only half my men worked while the other half stood guard with spears, shields, bows, coats of mail. The leaders stationed themselves behind the people of Judah who were building the wall. The laborers carried on their work with one hand supporting their load, with one hand holding a weapon. All the builders had a sword belted to their side. The trumpeters stayed with me to sound the alarm. You get the idea? They're sharing the load. They're all working together to accomplish the mission. And when they got worn out, when they got tired, when they got discouraged, they came along and they encouraged each other. They shared the load in that way. My mom used to have this fun little game that she played with Michelle and I when we were growing up. It was called this. It had a title. It was called, It's All Right, I Got It. That was the name of the game. But you have to say it like that. It's all right, I got it. I got it. My mom had a 4th degree, master's degree or something in guilt trip. She was really, really good at that. And so that's where this game came from. If she was bringing groceries in from the car, or maybe we were having a family meal going somewhere and she was taking stuff out to the car to do that, or maybe packing the camper, whatever. If she was doing something and she walked by us and maybe we were standing there just kind of watching, or maybe we were sitting doing something else, this is what she would do. She would walk by with her, everything, all these things, as much as she could carry. I think she did that on purpose, right? It wasn't like one thing. As much as she could carry. It's all right, I got it. No, don't get up, you sit. You go ahead and you enjoy your television program, enjoy your tea. I got it. And then, of course, you think about that for about 10 years of your life, what that does to your brain, right? So even as an adult now, when I walk by somebody and they're doing something, there's something internally inside of me, and it's not a bad thing, but I want to be able to go. I want to be able to go and help. It's all right. Don't get up. I got it. And I think sometimes in the local church setting, maybe not just in families, but certainly in the church setting, we need to remember that strong teams, they share the load. We can't have this mindset. If we're going to accomplish everything that we want to accomplish as a ministry, we can't have a mindset that says that we're going to come and enjoy everything and watch everybody else do all the work. I'll just sit here and enjoy it and be the beneficiary of all of these great things. Strong teams share the load. They share the load. Two personal questions that I would ask of you to just think through, and it's this. How am I, and when I say I'm asking you to ask yourself this question, how am I personally engaged in our mission, in our vision? Are you? I mean, can you point to something that you would say, this is how I am personally engaged in the mission of this church? How about this one? What am I personally doing to help improve our ministry? What are you personally doing to help improve? I'm not saying what are you doing to help enjoy it, help observe it, help criticize it. No, what are you doing to help improve the ministry? Can you point to something? When we're building something that matters and that we want to build it to last, we're always going to build something stronger if we do it as a team. And strong teams, they share the load. One more. Strong teams, write this down, strong teams fight for each other, not with each other. It's a pretty simple principle. It's found in verse 14 of chapter 4. Nehemiah looks over the situation. He sees the challenges in front of them, and he says this. He called together the nobles, the rest of the people, and he said, don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord, who is great and glorious, and then fight for your brothers, fight for your sons, fight for your daughters, fight for your wives, fight for your families. They had each other's back. They looked out for one another. They were focused on the mission, and they made sure that they fought for each other, not with each other. My sister Michelle and I, when we were kids, we fought a lot when we were growing up, especially when we were younger. I was a picker, and she was a scratcher and a screamer. So we really had a good system worked out as far as how the fighting would go. And I can remember when that changed, when there were boys starting to prowl around, right, and interested in my sister. And I'm not talking about like good, nice Christian boys that love Jesus. I'm not talking about those kind of boys. Boys that had no business being around my sister. And there was just something inside of me, and I can't explain it at the time, but there was something inside of me that just switched. And I found myself fighting for my sister instead of with my sister, and it radically changed our relationship. The same is true when it comes to our ministry. We want to make sure that in ministry that we are fighting for each other, that we're not letting selfishness or pride get in the way of getting the job done. The same thing's true in your marriage and in your family. How do you keep from fighting with each other? Well, one of the basic principles is you fight for each other. If you're fighting for each other, you can't be fighting with each other. We learn to fight for each other, committing ourselves to reaching the mission or accomplishing the mission, cheering on those who are doing it beside us, protecting them from harm with kindness and with grace, protecting them from harm with honesty. You know, sometimes we step on each other's toes. That happens in families, it happens in marriages, it happens in ministry. When that happens, we can't be passive-aggressive with each other. We're just honest with each other, and gracious and kind. That's how we fight for each other instead of with each other. When we're building things that matter and we're building them to last, we're always going to build something stronger if we do it in a team. And strong teams fight for each other. They don't fight with each other. What we're building here at Grace Fellowship, I absolutely believe matters. Because what we're building here is a ministry that is going to help people meet Jesus, learn to follow Jesus, and share Jesus as we all are moving towards Jesus-centered lives. And if we're gonna build a ministry that's gonna last and impact generations beyond our own, we need the Lord's help, and we need to do it as a team. Strong teams trust the Lord, they share the vision, they share the load, and they fight for each other. They fight for each other. If you're not serving on a ministry team here at Grace Fellowship, here's the simple challenge. The simple challenge is this: healthy disciples serve. And so at the bottom of the notes page today on the website, there's a card there that you can select, and it's a spiritual gift discovery tool. You can click on that, fill that out. Pastor Jeff will get that, and he'll help find a good fit. We're not just going to take you and say, well, we need some warm bodies over here and some warm bodies over there. We want to make sure that we find a really good fit for you in ministry, and we'll walk through that with you. Maybe the next step that needs to happen, though, is you're not yet a follower of Christ, and so what I would suggest, what I would recommend is if you're ready to trust Christ as your Savior, as your forgiver of sin, if you're ready to follow Him, then there's a card right next to that one I just described on the notes page today that says, I'm ready. Just click on that. It'll walk you through the gospel in a very simple way. If you have any questions, let us know that. But once you respond to faith in Jesus Christ, now you're ready for ministry. And we'd love to help you take that next step. And if you are serving on at least one ministry team, I just want to say thank you. Truly thank you. Because as you serve on a ministry team, wherever that is, maybe it's seen, maybe it's unseen, you are helping us accomplish the mission that God has given us to make disciples, to help people live Jesus-centered lives. And we truly appreciate that. And I want to say to you, keep serving. Keep moving towards the mission. Keep working hard at accomplishing that vision. Making sure that we're trusting God to give us everything that we need to accomplish it well. Making sure that we're fighting for each other, that we keep a shared vision, we're sharing the load. Keep working towards that. We're going to see God continue to do amazing things as He helps us, as He gives us His strength, and we work together as a team. We're going to build something that lasts, build something that matters.